Good morning, committee. We will call the meeting for March 18th to order. First thing on our agenda is final action on Senate Bill 245. As I indicated yesterday, we had a couple of changes to the bill that were worked out yesterday morning. Eileen, can you give us a review of those changes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. See, I actually have my speaker on and I'm not muted or anything. This is a first. I want you to mark this day. So good morning, committee. As I promised you yesterday, you should have in front of you a brief that summarizes what we spoke about. I just wanted to kind of go over what I discussed yesterday with the brief in front of you, and then I'll go over the couple of changes that occurred to the language of the bill. So I wanted to stress that the original organization of Senate Bill 245 is unchanged. The only thing that's been amended, and it's happened throughout the bill, but the organizational structure is unchanged. It's been amended to allow both electric public utilities and natural gas public utilities to be able to securitize those qualified extraordinary costs. And where you can see those terms and definitions that can apply to both the securitization of qualified extraordinary costs and the securitization of the energy generating facilities. I'm sorry, the qualified extraordinary costs of both electric public utilities and natural gas public utilities. Those are in the definition section, but I've pulled out those terms. They're listed 1 through 6, are the public utility qualified extraordinary costs, and then the secured utility tariff bonds, charges, costs, and property. And then we preserved the terms, the term of energy transition cost, which is the securitization of those energy generating facilities that are retired or abandoned or to be retired or abandoned. And then we added electric public utility and natural gas public utility. And then, as I discussed yesterday, where necessary, the processes were bifurcated to differentiate between the securitization of those energy transition costs and qualified extraordinary costs. And those occur in the following areas. Of the document I handed out yesterday, on page 6 within the definition of securitized tariff bonds, in section 2, subsection A, pertaining to the securitization of energy transition costs, and subsection B, it's pertaining to the securitization of qualified extraordinary costs. And then in section 2, subsection C9, pertaining to the application itself, the contents of the application. Then we had the generic terms, the securitization, securitized utility tariff bonds, charges, costs, and property. Those terms were substituted throughout the bill where necessary and applicable. And then the 3 new sections of what a financing order from the commission should contain are on pages 15 through 16, and those are paragraphs 14, 15, and 16. As I said, the act was renamed to reflect the bill's new dual purpose, and it's called now the Utility Financing and Securitization Act. And this is what changed yesterday. 2 new provisions were added to the bill, and these provisions were the result of the compromise that was referenced during the meeting yesterday between Evergy, the Kansas Industrial Consumers Group, and the KCC and Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board, or CURB. Those provisions I handed out instead of killing like 4 more trees. I just printed out those sections. Those are the pages that are highlighted and attached to my brief. On page 13, section 2, subsection E2, cap A, it says that the securitized utility tariff charges allocated to special contract customers as a result of a financing order regarding a retirement or abandonment shall be offset by net quantifiable rate benefits of at least the same amount. And then on page 22, section 3H is new. And that says that the commission shall not approve an application for a financing order associated with an asset retirement or abandonment if the application does not establish that the securitization of the specified retired or abandoned generating facility provides net quantifiable rate benefits to customers as required under this act. And everything else of the bill remains unchanged, with the caveat that we went through and kind of proofed it a little bit more and made, punctuation and changes to reflect readability and consistency throughout the bill. And with that, Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Eileen. Committee, are there questions? I want to make sure that I and the committee understand this correct. Since this is a substitute bill, these changes have already been made to that bill, and so we don't need to adopt a balloon on these amendments. Is that correct?
That's correct. We have the choice of either amending straight out Senate Bill 245, but given the breadth and detail of the amendments that would have been needed for the bill itself, it was a little bit wiser to just scrap the original bill and do a substitute bill for Senate Bill 245. So what was handed out yesterday was essentially proposed substitute for Senate Bill 245. And with these 2 pages, with a little bit of amendment, it's still proposed substitute for 245.
Committee, any questions? It's the committee's pleasure.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we pass out favorably substitute for Senate Bill 245.
Okay, is there a second? Seconds everywhere. Gossage? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, committee, what I would like to do now, per House request, is I would like to have a motion to empty the contents of House Bill 2072, which was the RBC bill that we passed the Senate version, so we're not losing anything here, and insert the contents of substitute for Senate Bill 245 into House Bill 2072. Olson moves, Hildebrand seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.
Mr. Chair, who made the motion?
Olson,
Thank you.
Hildebrand seconds. So Senate substitute for 245, more now known as House Bill 2072, is on its way to the Senate floor. Or a motion on House Bill 2072. Olson moves, Dietrich seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now it's on its way to the floor. I would like to publicly thank all of the stakeholders for their willingness to work through this. I know it was difficult. I know there was a lot of give and take, and I appreciate everyone's efforts. Okay, committee, I am going to try to save you from working tomorrow. So if you will pull out House Bill 2243, which was adjusting the frequency of the excuse me, of the actuarial experience study. I'd like to work that bill. I have passed out a balloon. If you want to take a look at that balloon. Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we adopt the balloon amendment to change the enactment date from the statute book to the Kansas Register on House Bill 2243.
Thank you. Hildebrand moves, Olson seconds. Any discussion? Changing the enactment date from the statute book to the register. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The balloon is adopted. Is there a motion on House Bill 2243 as amended? Senator Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we pass out House Bill number 2243 as amended favorably for passage.
Dietrich seconds. Any discussion? Seeing
Mr.
none, all
Chair?
those, yes.
Who seconded?
Dietrich?
Thank you. I can't see, and when you move your head, the mic cuts out. Sorry.
I'll try to hold my head real still.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All those in favor of House Bill 2243 say aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 2243 as amended is passed out. Let's go to House Bill 2064, which was the drop bill. There is also an amendment on your desk if someone is interested in that amendment. Senator Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we adopt the balloon amendment that changes the enactment date from the statute book to the Kansas Register for House Bill 2064.
Olson seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The balloon is adopted. What's your pleasure on the bill?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Hildebrand.
I make a motion that we pass out House Bill number 2064 as amended favorably for passage.
Dietrich seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, let's look at House Bill 2187. We heard yesterday on the first-time home buyers. 2187. Okay, committee, we heard this yesterday. What I would like to do, if it meets the committee's pleasure, is let's take a conceptual amendment on the enactment date. And the reason I say that is because there is now some question on whether mobile homes and manufacturing homes should or should not, and whether they can be included in this bill based on how they're taxed. Quite honestly, I need more time. So if we can put the conceptual amendment on the bill, then we could fix that at conference however we need to fix it, if that makes sense. Okay, Senator Olson moves a conceptual amendment to change the enactment date to the register. Gossage seconds. Any discussion on the amendment? Senator Gossage?
Actually, I was about to say that exact same thing. Is there any way that we could have time to review that for the mobile homes? So I think that's a wise decision.
Senator Pittman.
I mean, I would like to see the mobile homes in this if we could. I think Senator Fagg made a good point that that's a first-time home buying option for a lot of folks. I understand that there might not be a way to do that with property versus real tax, so I hope we can. I don't know if we've got a position as a committee on that, so I'm just hoping that we can put it in.
It is my intention to investigate it, and if it is possible based on the different tax structures, then my intention would be to try to include it in conference. Okay, we're voting on the conceptual amendment. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Is there a motion on the 2187 as amended? We've got, Holscher jumped right in there and got the second. Any
Mr. Chair.
discussion? Yes,
Who made the motion, please?
Olson,
Thank you.
any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those no. Motion carries. 2187 is passed out favorably. All right, let's look at 265, Senate Bill 265, which was the death and disability moratorium that we passed that we heard yesterday. Senate Bill 265. Anybody need a review or any discussion? Anybody wish to provide a motion on what you'd like to do with that bill? Senator Olson? Gossage seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, you have just earned a day off tomorrow. That is correct. No amendments on 265. Okay. Now, we are going to have a hearing on Senate Bill 199. This was announced late. We did not have the opportunity to get all of our conferees here and get testimony in, so my intention is to have the hearing. I think we only have possibly one proponent orally today. We will continue the hearing to allow, I had 6 phone calls this morning of people who want to testify on the bill. So we will continue, we will leave the hearing open, and then at some point we'll try to go back to it. Okay? Okay, we'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 199. Eileen, can you give us an overview?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 199 would amend KSA 2020 Sup 40-2, 193 to bring existing state law into line with the federal definition of a short-term limited duration insurance policy. Senate Bill 199 is largely a reintroduction of House Bill 2053, a bill from the 2019 legislative session. And for context, during that session, there was a package of bills that was requested based on the final rule promulgated by the Department of Labor in response to Executive Order 13813 from the Trump administration, directing the Secretaries of Treasury, Labor, and Health and Human Services to take quote unquote creative action in order to increase access to health care. So 2019 House Bill 2053 was originally heard on February 4th, 2019, and no action was taken on the bill by the House Committee on Insurance. The bill was resurrected in the 2020 legislative session and was passed out of committee but died on GO and was stricken from the calendar on the House. So to return to the current bill, under current state law, a short-term health policy may be either 6 or 12 months in duration and be renewed only once, regardless of the policy duration. Senate Bill 199 would amend KSA 2020 Sup 40-2, 193 to define a short-term limited duration insurance policy as an insurance policy that is less than 12 months and that offers renewal or extension periods up to a maximum policy period of 36 total months of duration. Finally, the federal final rule also requires that a notification statement be printed on any application and contract materials for a short-term limited duration policy. Among other things, the statement informs the consumer that the insurance policy being considered is not compliant with the ACA, and that if coverage were to expire, the consumer might have to wait until an open enrollment period to get other health insurance coverage. However, in 2020, when the House Insurance Company worked the bill, it chose to amend the disclaimer language based on the individual mandate and the corresponding penalty under the ACA not being enforced by the Trump administration. then that amended notification language with some slight modifications appears in this bill. And with that, Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions.
Eileen, committee, are there questions? Seeing none, we will now turn to the proponents. Our first up is Senator Beverly Gossage. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you all. I testified on this bill last year, and it did pass through the House committee, and it was pulled because of COVID, so we didn't have any bills that, any of these bills like this that appeared before the House. Just a couple of quick things. Of course, I'm not going to read my testimony to you. I know you have it before you. These short-term medical plans have been around for decades. They help people who are in a situation, mostly the target purchaser would be someone who, for example, if you'll see down there under that bold heading, are employees who are between jobs and they can't choose to pay or can't afford the Cobra from their former job and just need something to help them in the interim. And then B, those are employees whose small employer maybe doesn't offer group health insurance, and again, the AC marketplace is too expensive for them. Or C, employees whose employer plan costs are unaffordable for their dependents. You know, many employers just offer plans for the employee where they pay 100% or 50% of the employer or employee's cost, but do not pay toward dependents. And then we have self-employed Kansans who find the ACA marketplace too expensive. This is for them. Now, if these are folks that fall between 100% or 250% of the poverty level, of course they would choose the ACA. Those plans are usually fairly inexpensive for them, and some are even at zero. These are for folks that don't fall into that category. They're more the middle income people. Or college students whose school does not offer a health plan and the ACA marketplace plans are too expensive, or retired seniors. As a health insurance agent myself, I could say the retired seniors are usually the ones that I help most. And the ACA plans, as you'll see later, are just way too expensive for them. So just a little background, all we're trying to change today is the fact that short-term medical plans historically have been less than 12 months. So they're like 364 days out of the year. And people can purchase up to that amount. And some carriers will let them purchase 3 days, 1 month, 6 months, and up to 12. However, the way most of the plans are written, they are much less expensive than, as the ACA plans. In fact, 70 to 80% sometimes, depending on the plan that you're looking at, most likely between 65 and 70% less expensive. There's a reason they're less expensive, and one is that they do not cover pre-existing conditions. So if someone purchases this plan, because most of these people would be uninsured if they didn't purchase this plan, it doesn't cover some things like normal maternity. Well, there are a lot of people, like single males, even women who are retired beyond childbearing age, or even a young person who's like, I'll just save up and pay for that for myself with the savings that I'm not having to pay for premium. So it does serve a niche, but it's not right for everyone. However, the way most of the plans are written, and especially since they're limited to 12 months, after that 12 months, it's not a renewal period. It is you buy a brand new policy. So that pre-existing rule starts over. And that's fine, and some people are absolutely fine with that. But to give better consumer protection, it is that we would like to be able to extend that where the carrier can say, yes, you start over, but we will not start over the pre-existing provision. Does that make sense? So that just protects them more. So if you had something happen to you in that first 12 months and then you were to start all over and buy a new policy, anything that happened in that first 12 months would be considered pre-existing. With this change, it allows the carrier to say, yes, you'll start all over in a brand new plan, but any pre-existing that happened in that first 12 months is not going to count against you. The same thing happens in the third year. It gives them more time. So if you'll turn the page in the testimony, you'll see that, and I just mentioned the consumer protections, short-term medical plans are insurance. We hear that the uninsured, they don't even count people who have short-term medical plans, the Farm Bureau plans, Association Health plans, but they are insurance. And you can see the example there in 2017, that's the savings that they had in premium, but this was fully covered. We have a staff member on our leadership team that this happened to just this past year, who had a short-term medical plan, had to have an emergency gallbladder surgery. The total cost would have been $97,000. However, they only had to pay their $2,500 deductible on their plan. So it does cover large things. It is indeed insurance. All we're trying to do is extend it for greater consumer protection. So just real quickly, I want to show you why they're so popular. And I can tell you that before the ACA, I seldom wrote a short-term medical plan, maybe a college student and they had, or somebody in between jobs. But the rates are so expensive on the ACA that now we went from 100,000 nationwide to 3 million people who have moved to these plans. Let's look at some actual quotes that I printed out for you, and I'll do this quickly. I did an actual quote for a 55-year-old, zip code 66204, and you'll notice on the next page that I did a screenshot so that you can see it ranges from $650 a month to $1,170 a month for a 55-year-old. You will also notice that these plans, most of them are HMOs or an EPO, which means you cannot go out of your network. And you'll notice that the deductible is $6,000 or $8,550 total out of pocket. If you want to go up to $6,250 total out of pocket, you're at $1,170. These are people who would remain uninsured. They could not afford this. However, to buy a short-term medical plan, and this is a screenshot, this would be a $5,000 deductible, which is the most popular plan, and they would pay $327. And then finally, if you look at the screenshot that I did for the same thing for the 22-year-old, $229, $8,550 deductible. And again, you'll notice this is an EPO. You can't go out of network, very limited network, or $524.76 for a Blue Cross Community Blue Select, whereas that young person can buy a policy for $83 a month. So it certainly does serve a purpose. And again, all we're trying to do is not debate short-term medical plans. These are here to stay. They've been around for a long time. What you'll hear in opponent testimony is, sadly, yes, there are people that have pre-existing conditions that won't be able to buy these plans. That's true. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't give other people an option to be able to buy these policies as we have. We're just trying to protect those who do have them. And I would draw your attention to the third testimony, which is from Brian Blaze, who's the Special Assistant to the President, National Economic Council from 2017 to 19, and he points to a study done by the Manhattan Institute because their concern was, well, there might be narrow networks. And again, these are PPO networks. These are actual in-network and out-of-network for short-term medical plans. There was also some concern that it would hurt the individual health insurance market, and this study has shown it has not hurt the individual marketplace. And those states that permit short-term medical plans are better enrollment and insured participation. And then finally, there's been a 61% increase that I miss in, but please note, less erosion from enrollment. So, my heart goes out to folks. I work with people every day that come to me and say, I have this condition or I have that condition. Sadly, I have to say, I'm sorry, this is February, you missed open enrollment. You're going to have to wait till the next open enrollment. Or someone says, I forgot to enroll. I'm a healthy person. I totally forgot about it. Can I still get insurance? And I have to say, you'll have to wait till the next open enrollment, unless you would like to have a short-term medical plan. Because short-term medical plans, you can apply the next day, and it goes into effect the next day, so they can get insurance right away. And for that, I will stand for questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Committee, are there questions? Senator Dietrich.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very informative. I didn't know much about this, and I still have a couple questions.
Sure.
So if you were that 22-year-old college student and you had $5,000 deductible and a pretty reasonable premium, when you have to go to the doctor, do you pay like we would pay our, office visit fee? Is that still a piece of this?
It works more like an HSA, and if you're familiar with an HSA, then it will apply to your deductible, but you get the negotiated discounted price. However, most of them do have, like, urgent care is $50 or $45 so that people can have that immediate with the copay.
So what about emergency room kinds of visits and prescriptions? Those are my two questions.
Oh, that's a very good question. Actually, with some plans, prescriptions are covered. The least expensive plans, of course, do not cover prescriptions. But again, I write these all the time, and you have people, and I write the ACA. I'm appointed to be able to write on the marketplace. But you'll have people who say, well, I don't even take any prescriptions. Or if I do, I'll just pay for those because the money I'm saving, instead of paying $228 and paying $80, will save me a lot of money that I could just pay for a prescription. But yes, that's very true. And I think it's extremely important. I'm all about consumer education, as you know, that they know exactly what they're buying, exactly what it's going to cover. And I want you to know that the $5,000 is the typical that people buy, but there are $2,500 deductible plans. But of course, they're a little bit more expensive than the $5,000 deductible.
Emergency room question.
Well, the
Does that
emergency room.
apply- do you pay the full cost of the emergency room visit and it's applied to your deductible?
There is a $250 fee if it's non-emergent, because sadly, we have people that'll go and it's not really an emergency, and so that $250 would not apply to the deductible, but yes, it would apply. Your emergency room fee applies to your total out-of-pocket. That's why we're saying the person right here in the Capitol, it was totally, had to go to the emergency room, had to have this surgery for the gallbladder extraction, and it was only the $2,500.
Committee, are there additional questions? I see none. Thank you. Oh, Senator Horscher.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the information. With the American Rescue Plan that has just passed, does that not address some of the gaps that are there that you're talking about?
That's a good question, and we don't know yet. What they're trying to do is potentially expand up to the 400%. What people don't realize is even though it goes from 100% of poverty level up to 400% to get a subsidy, if I told you that your plan was $1,170 and your subsidy is $20 a month, so we don't know how much that's going to be, but right now it's very little to nothing.
What about Cobra? That's often used.
Yeah, are you familiar with Cobra?
Somewhat.
Okay. Cobra is just the price that the employer pays, the total price for the premium. So oftentimes the employer will pay 50% or 75%, a few will pay 100% of the Cobra cost. So the individual really doesn't have a clue how much that total price is until they say, I'm going to consider Cobra. It's usually a big shock as to how much it is. Now, I will say, I always encourage clients, because I'm about producer education and making sure that the consumer is protected, to say, why don't you, before you consider this, why don't you look and see how much your Cobra is? Look at your benefits that you have now. Let me help you compare, because it could be your Cobra might be a better situation for you than even going on the ACA marketplace. Just because Cobra is offered to you doesn't exclude you, and if you just lost your job, you could go on the marketplace. But the thing about Cobra is, because it is a group plan, it's often very expensive, unless you're like 64, because that Cobra is based upon the average age and health condition of the average employee. So let's say the average employee is 40 and you're 64, it could be a pretty good deal for you to go on to Cobra. So I always want them to look at all of their options before they make a decision.
Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Senator, and thanks for bringing this up. And I'm really not trying to troll anything or cast dispersions, but I do have some concerns on this, and since you're here, we might as well chat about it. There's two big concerns, and I think you addressed some of it, but just to be clear, the short-term plans aren't required to cover pre-existing conditions, are they?
They aren't. There are some that do, though. You could buy a guaranteed issue short-term medical plan, but obviously it's going to be more expensive.
And if one gets a condition in the 12 months when one is on these short-term plans, does that then they're not, if you find that you, for example, have cancer, you're not necessarily going to be covered for longer than that 12-month period for that condition that's discovered, correct?
Well, if you had the 36 months, then yes, you could. This bill allows you to be able to stay on for 36 months with your plan, because they're not going to do a look back at that first 12 months or the second 12 months.
And then
If
after,
you developed in the first 12 months, then yes, they would continue to cover you.
but then after that, they're not required to keep you on after that, correct?
Right, we're just saying up to 36 months because we have to go with federal regulation, and federal just allows up to 36 months. So each state has to adopt that to allow them to do that. And I have so many stories that I could tell you that would be really great if somebody could have been able to stay on. Now, that they can stay on for their 12 months, and then, of course, they can automatically go and apply in the ACA, and they would be accepted, but their premiums are likely to be much higher.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Additional questions? Senator Dietrich?
So, and you may have said this and I missed it. Piggybacking off what Senator Pittman said. So if it is extended to 3 years and my premium, I'll just pick a number, $320 a month policy. Does it stay that, even if I get cancer and?
Yeah, they cannot change your premium
Not
because of
change.
your condition, no.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Senator Hildebrand?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Gossage, so the short-term policies are currently available, and what is the time frame that you can renew them currently?
Depends on the carrier. Some carriers will let you do 6 days, you know, because you're just going to need it for 6 days. Some do 1 month, but it's up to 364 days.
That's what our current ones are now.
That's what the current ones are.
Almost 12 months. So someone with a pre-existing condition would be better off if we adopted this bill than what our current statutes.
It is. It's better consumer protection, because if they did develop something like Senator Diedrich said in that first 12 months, they could continue for up to 3 years, or the total of 3 years, without that look back in the first year. Missouri adopted this, and so I write short-term plans in multiple states, and it's nice to be able to share with consumers that you have this option. Now, granted, it's not mandated, so Kansas is just saying, insurance company, you have the option of doing this, of allowing up to 36 months, and then they can say, consumer, you have the option of purchasing the 12 months or up to the 36 months. And I do want to clarify. When you ask me, like, if, say, your premium's $365, the next year it might go up some, but that's just because it goes up every year. It has nothing to do with your health condition that developed in that first year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a person has had the short-term coverage 36 months. Does the, pardon my ignorance of the health insurance industry, in life insurance industry, there are conversion privileges or options. Do or can companies offer conversion to a longer-term care policy, or not really? I mean,
Actually, that would just be life insurance that does that, but that's a good point. But years ago, health insurance did have that, like if you had an employer plan and you want to convert that to an individual policy, but the ACA changed that. So this is what some people do. We have multiple carriers that offer these plans in the state of Kansas. So maybe they finished their 36 months here, and let's say they didn't really develop anything major during that 36 months. They could purchase another 36 months from another carrier. It's just 36 months at one time with one carrier.
with that same carrier, if they said, well, I really like the way this company's treated me, they would just then have to start over or requalify, or
Keep in mind that most of these carriers that offer short-term medical plans do not offer ACA plans. There would be no conversion anyway.
okay, thank you.
We're just trying to give better protection for those who do purchase short-term medical plans so they could have a longer time.
Sure, yeah, I think it's a great idea. I just thought, well, because of the questions that had been asked, if a person does bump up against that 36 months.
And they, again, they can always go to, they can choose a different carrier's 12-month, 36-month plan, or they can go to the ACA.
Thank you, Chairman.
Additional questions? See none? Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Do not believe we have David Powell today virtually or in person. Proponent written-only testimony was provided by Brian Blasey, which Senator Gossage referred to. Opponent oral, Christina Coert, do we have you online?
Yes.
Are you wishing to testify today or at another time?
I can testify today.
Okay, that'd be great.
Wonderful. Well, Chair Longbine and members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to comment on SB 199. I'm Christina Cowart. I'm the Kansas Grassroots Manager for the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. And we are opposed to expanding access to short-term limited duration plans because they can deny coverage to people with pre-existing conditions like cancer. They can choose not to cover services related to that pre-existing condition. And they can also charge enrollees higher premiums because of the pre-existing condition. While premiums for these plans tend to be lower, our research continues to show that enrollees with serious illnesses are actually exposed to much higher out-of-pocket costs. I go into much more detail in my written testimony, as well as our 2020 cost of cancer report, which outlines the cost of cancer under a number of different insurance scenarios. So I would encourage you guys to look at that report. Because of these short-term plans are exempt from many consumer protections, the premiums for these products tend to be lower than marketplace plans, and because of that, they can be attractive to younger and healthier folks. And as we see younger and healthier folks enrolling in these types of products, it can end up resulting in higher premiums for comprehensive coverage in the individual marketplace. So this would mean that people with serious illnesses like cancer end up having to pay more for their insurance coverage. It should also be noted we're at a time when many people across Kansas have lost their jobs, and with that, their employer-sponsored health insurance coverage, and they're going to be looking for affordable health insurance options. And Senate Bill 199 will unnecessarily expose people to the inherent risks and harms that come with these non-comprehensive plans. So ACS urges the members of this committee to protect access to comprehensive healthcare coverage by opposing Senate Bill 199. Happy to take any questions.
Tina, thank you. Committee, are there any questions? Senator Peck?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, but your very last comment didn't seem to, I don't understand it, I guess is the way I would say it. You said to protect. If I'm reading this right, and I apologize, Mr. Chairman, for being late to committee, I was testifying in another committee, but this option is strictly voluntary. A person can choose a short-term plan, but they don't have to. So if I can get you to go over your last comment about protecting others, or I don't even remember what you said, I didn't write it down, but that's what solicited this question, was the very last comment.
Yeah, we would like to see protection for comprehensive healthcare coverage, not these non-comprehensive short-term plans. And I think the key is, no one plans to get cancer or any serious illness or get into an accident. And I think what we see with people enrolling in these short-term plans is that they think they have some type of coverage, and then find out that they really don't have the coverage that they think they've got.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm missing a connection here. How would SB 199 hinder persons from having comprehensive coverage?
Because these plans are non-comprehensive. And so what we find with people that have cancer and serious illnesses that are enrolled in these types of short-term products is that they end up expending a much higher out-of-pocket cost than if they were on a comprehensive insurance plan through the marketplace.
I don't disagree with any of that. I'm just still trying to make the connection how this would hinder a person from making the choice to have. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the spirit of free enterprise and having options, I'm thinking of this guy that's unemployed. and saying, how can I afford the comprehensive? You know, and at least gives them choices. So I think I'd rather have one of these short-term plans than I would one of these comprehensive plans, because I think a lot of those people might say, I'm not going to have no plan at all. So I just kind of wanted you to respond to that.
Yeah, I think, you know, the talking point we hear is that, right, this is essentially better than nothing. And again, in our experience, what we've seen, and you can take a look at our 2020 cost of cancer report, is that a lot of folks get enrolled in these plans, and you know, your average consumer may not understand the intricacies of these plans, and they think that when they have an unexpected illness, whether that's cancer or an accident or COVID-19, they expect to have some type of coverage. And yes, while the premiums are very low, that's for a reason. And we find that they again find themselves with exorbitant out-of-pocket medical costs. They can deny coverage for a condition. The prescription drug coverage costs don't have to be covered. So again, we find that people again just are incurring exorbitant out-of-pocket medical costs.
Senator Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and just kind of piggybacking off of what Senator Fagg's question. So hypothetically, especially with all this unemployment that we're going through now, someone was 100% healthy, loses their job, loses their insurance, they have an option. They can go to Cobra and pay the full amount, which is probably more than what their unemployment is monthly, or they can go to the ACA, but because they had income, they can't afford for the subsidies, so now they're going to pay full price at the ACA, or they can get a short-term health plan. The agent is a good agent and explains to them the differences and the benefits. That person's healthy. At 11 months, that person's diagnosed with cancer. Currently, under state law, on that 12th month, they cannot renew their policy. Now they have to be counted for that pre-existing condition. So you're trying to tell us that this policy that we currently have is better than passing this bill that would extend that for 36 months for that cancer patient. Because on that 11th month, that cancer is treated, covered under these plans, but on 12th month and 1 day, they're not, or on the 12th month, they're not covered. So you would prefer to have the original current statute versus improving that to 36 months?
So we don't support short-term limited duration plans in general. Again, because of the medical costs that people incur on these plans, whether they're on it for 12 months or for 36 months. And it's our understanding that on these plans, which is contrary to what Senator Gossage has said, that an illness that's diagnosed within those first 12 months would be a pre-existing condition under the renewal. So this is different from our understanding of the bill.
So your objection's not to extending, which this bill does. Your objection is to the plans, which this bill has nothing to do with. It's just extending it. So your actual objection is you would rather have this done away with completely.
Our objection is to non-comprehensive short-term limited duration plans in general. We prefer comprehensive healthcare coverage that can't deny people with pre-existing conditions like cancer treatment.
One more follow-up question, if I may. Do you guys support cancer insurance policies?
I'm sorry, I don't want to speak out of turn, and I'm not familiar with cancer insurance policies in particular.
AFLAC?
I'm sorry.
AFLAC? Are you familiar with AFLAC? They have cancer policies?
Yes, I'm familiar with AFLAC, but I'm not familiar with cancer policies. And again, I'm not going to speak out of turn. So I'm just going to say, you know, again, we support comprehensive health insurance coverage we don't support non-comprehensive short-term limited duration policies like these in general.
Well, that was the gist of my question, because I have a cancer policy that's strictly cancer. It's not comprehensive. So if you don't support comprehensive health insurance policies, you don't support my cancer policy. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm happy to circle back offline.
Committee, we are out of time. Appreciate those that have testified on us. We will try to get back to this at some point. We'll leave the committee hearing open, and we are adjourned.